everybody, thanks for stopping by. This week I figured we could talk about this chicken tractor. So we followed Polyface Farm's approach to raising meat birds. Definitely found this cage had a low upfront cost. It was easy to move around day to day while raising the chickens, and also just easy to store when we weren't using it. So before I hop in of how I built this one, let me talk about some of the differences from ours compared to Polyface's. So it's just my wife and I right now, and we figured 25 birds a year is quite a bit. Heck, 50 is even more. So we went with a little smaller size. This also just made it cheaper to build in the beginning, but really, in case my wife wanted to move it, it gave her the opportunity to do so as well. So we figured this 8 by 8 foot cage, that's 2 foot tall, was plenty of room for the 25 birds. During the 6 to 8 weeks of growth time before we process them, we moved them each morning. Now, the last half week to week, I started moving them twice a day. I don't think it was needed, just kind of gave my wife and I peace of mind that the droppings and stuff weren't too much on the ground, making sure they were clean before we processed them. The last main difference from Polyface is the Dolly here. I made a previous video a few months back. I'll try to link it here in the description, but I don't think I have enough subscribers at the moment, so you have to go find it yourself. All right, y'all, well, let's go look how I built this. So in total, I used 9 2x4s. They're all 8 foot long, unpressure treated. You can go ahead and get the lowest grade because there's really not much structural requirements for this lumber. On my table saw, I went and ripped all the 2x4s in half, right? So taking the width of 3.5 inch wide, ripping that in half, slightly down from 1 3/4 inch this way. I started off by making the top square and the bottom square first. Each one of these corners I laid one going this way, one butting up against this. Next corner is this way and that way. Therefore, it's a true perfect square all the way around. I then on the bottom one did that same pattern but backwards. That way these seams right here on the bottom one, now the seam is here in this piece, just giving it extra strength in the frame. I use these galvanized ties you find in the framing section at pretty much any hardware store, and just use regular exterior screws. They're 1 1/4 inch each. So once I got both the top square and bottom square done, I went and determined how long or how tall I wanted these vertical posts to be. So in my case, they're a little shy of 2 feet. Really the height you want is probably anywhere between 1.5 feet to 2.5 feet tall. Really, the chicken wire is what determines that. In my case, my local store had 2 foot wire, therefore I made this total height just slightly lower than 2 feet. So in total, you're gonna need 8 of these vertical posts here. I started off on the bottom one square, just putting all 8 vertical pieces in. Once I was done with that, I came back, put the top square on the vertical post, and screwed those in as well. Again, doesn't have to be perfectly square, but try to get as close as possible. These ties will really help out. Now that the full exterior box is finished, I went ahead and started working on the support for the door. Go ahead and in the center, right by your vertical post, put another section all the way across. This one will be slightly less than 8 feet as it sits between both outside posts. From there, also put in the center another post going from the center of this cross beam on this side. This is just going to help hold the roof up later. So the last major step to build your frame is to put in these supports right here. Remember, anytime you can add a triangle to a square, it makes it stronger. Now you can go ahead and measure this to get it as close as possible, but really the easiest way is just to hold the board up to the outside of this and the vertical support over there and just draw a line and then cut across it. That'll give you a much flusher surface to surface match than you ever were trying to guess with measuring it. So now that we've got the box frame done, now we also want to make a door right here. Just make sure the length fits within the boards and the width. You know, really give yourself 1/2 inch to inch on all sides. Chickens aren't going to jump out, be totally fine. Now you can go ahead and apply the chicken wire. Remember, it doesn't have to be pretty. I went ahead and just used brad nails along the whole thing, but you can also use those net screws as well to have a nice wide head. I used 2-foot tall chicken wire on the whole entire outside, and then for this section of the top box and the door, I went ahead and used 4-foot tall chicken wire. I went ahead and just used 2 standard small hinges you find in the hardware store, one on both sides. To help stop the door while it was closed, I had this extra scrap laying around that I just put in both corners on the far side of the door. And also a block here with another galvanized framing square. I don't actually lock the door at all. Chickens aren't going to jump out of it. And if anything wanted to break in, there's easier ways for them to get in. Lastly, on the door, I just had this scrap laying around. So I went ahead and added it to it. You know, just making more triangles. But as you can tell, it's pretty bowed. Doesn't actually really do much. So I don't know if I would bother with it if I was you. But it won't hurt anything. The roof panel is about 3 feet, 3 inches wide, and then 8 feet long. Really just find anything you can get at the local hardware store. Cheaper the better. If you need, go ahead and put 2 on here. I think tin roof comes in just over 2 foot long, so you can put 2 here to get 4-foot spans. Again, remember, if you live in a colder climate than we do, maybe put a wall or 2 up here. One helpful hint is you could just have one corner walled off and just make sure it's always facing the north. In the wintertime, the cold air comes from the north, so any windbreak they get will help them quite a bit with retaining heat in their body. Well, thanks for sticking to the end. I hope this helped out. If you got any questions, put them down in the comment section. I'll try to answer them whenever I can. All right, y'all come back now.